And we begin with the Zoom orientation. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Albany. My name is Sam Trumbore, and I serve as the minister of our congregation. I'd like to orient you to several features that we use during our service. The first I'd like to show you is the name over here in the lower left-hand corner. You can change that name if you wish by going up to the upper right-hand corner of your screen. When you point at that, you'll see 3 dots, and you can click that and rename yourself if you wish, and then click OK. And you'll see the change show up down here. The second feature I'd like to show you is the ability to raise your hand. If you're on a telephone, the way that you can raise your hand is by pressing *9. If you're on a computer, the way that you can do it is by pressing the participant window button. That turns on the participant's window. If you go to the bottom of the participant window to the left, you'll see a little blue hand. You can press that with your pointer, and you will see that the hand gets raised. That will signal to the host that you would like to speak. We keep our participants muted during the service to keep the background noise at a minimum. The third feature I'd like to show you is the chat window. You can see down here where the chat is. I've got my cursor over it right now, and I'll press it. You'll see that Zoom group chat up here. At the bottom of that window, you can send a message. You can send a message to everyone, or you can send a message to a specific person. And you can see I've sent a message to Albany UU, which is a private message. You can see that's Albany UU up there. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can do so by clicking on the message that you will see appearing in the Zoom group chat now to members.albanyuu.org, welcome-visitors. That will allow you to fill out a form so we can be in touch with you, and you can find out about events that are happening in our congregation. This ends the Zoom orientation. Thanks for being with us this morning. Good morning. What a pleasure to have you with us this morning. We will do our best to welcome you and encourage you to feel included, even though we are all physically separated and can only see each other in these little tiny Zoom windows. But will our best be good enough? Will we be able to provide a sense of religious community through meeting virtually on Zoom? I'm inspired this morning by the Japanese term ganbaru. Those are the characters that you're going to see in the lower right side of the Google slide background. Ganbaru is a hugely popular expression in Japan that roughly translates as doing your best, but it is much more than that. Ganbaru expresses a relentless and dogged determination to keep striving until a goal is accomplished. May our Gamburu this morning make this a satisfying and meaningful service for you as we join together in the celebration of life. And our prelude this morning comes to us from, and let us light the chalice this morning and repeat the words that you'll see on the screen. Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community. And let us sing together. It sounds along the ages. Bohemian Brethren and W.C. Gannett is the source of this version, and will be led by Chris and Randy. It sounds along the ages, answering to song. It echoes on the pages of every idle soul. The psalmist heard and sang it from borders it broke, and prophet tongues out writing till sleeping nations woke. From Zion's cliffs it echoed, it breathed from Buddha's tree. It charmed in heaven's market, it hallowed Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pilgrim seaside prayer, the oracles of Concord, one holy word declared. It calls and no new justice, it speaks and no new truth. In ever nobler stature and unexhausted youth, forever unresounding and knowing God of time, our laws but catch the music of its eternal chime. And we like to enjoy welcoming guests and visitors to our service. If there are any guests or visitors who would like to tell us who they are and where they're from, you can click on that little blue hand symbol in the participant window. Our technician, Sapphire, will unmute you and invite you to speak. You may also, or instead, click on the visitor link that you'll now find in the chat window.
You supposed to do that?
I don't know. You could.
I don't know.
Invite me? Did you press that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, why don't you just speak, and I think we can hear you.
Okay, my name's Stu Couch.
I'm Susan Gempler.
Great.
We're from CUC in Paramus, New Jersey. And we're camping up your way this week, and we just thought it would be fun to attend your church service as well. We were at Caroga Lake this week. And
When we're traveling, we always try and go to another Unitarian church, so on
But-
Sundays.
But we had to come back, so we're just going to do it remotely.
Well, wonderful to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
You want to mute yourself now, thanks. And anybody else? Oh, there you are. We get to see you now. Okay, great. Anybody else, Sapphire? Doesn't sound like it. All right, well, thank you and welcome. If you'd like to learn more about us or our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, you can find in the participant window someone with membership. I think it's Peter Brown this morning with membership, actually after his name. You can reach out to Peter in the chat now or after the service. You can also at any time connect with our visitor link to get more information about our congregation from our website, albanyuu.org. And this is a time where we like to welcome and greet each other to our service in our Zoom format. This is done through virtual breakout rooms. You can say hello and share your name. Will last less than 2 minutes. So encourage you to say yes to the invitation to go to a breakout room. Well, we'll welcome whoever isn't in the breakout room. Good to see you this morning, Marietta and Anne and Nancy. We get to see Nancy's computer. And Anne, Brandon, good to see you, Anne. And Earl Zimmerman's back there someplace. John Schumacher, good to have you with us.
Happy Sunday from John and also Donna Dolan.
Great, great, good to see you. It's wonderful that we can have you visiting from you're on the West Coast, aren't you? Yeah.
West part of Albany.
Oh, West part of Albany, okay, great. And Mark and Alyssa, good to have you with us. Mary Rogers, good to have you here too. And Ed's out there somewhere, and so is Elizabeth, and Leah is there too. Hi, Earl, good to see you. And Sapphire, of course. Sapphire, I'm not sure how they got unmuted. Did you unmute them?
I think they figured it out.
Huh, because I turned off the ability to unmute yourself, but maybe it's got turned back on again. Okay. Great. So we're gonna bring people back. Has it been 2 minutes yet?
Yep.
All right, excellent. Back they come. A little rush of people.
Marietta, Sam, can you see, is Marietta on?
Yes, she is.
And who's that lovely person with her?
I can't see. I'm going to have to mute you now, Kathy. Please mute yourself.
Okay, yep, thanks.
All right. Welcome, welcome back. And I think we're going to move on to joys and sorrows. All right. So for joys and sorrows, we set aside this time in our service for sharing significant personal milestones in our lives. If we were in community hall, we would invite you to come forward and move a stone. If you'd like to share your joy or sorrow with us, there are still several ways that we can do that. At this time, you can type your joy or sorrow into the chat window. And if you'd like that read aloud, please put the words read aloud at the beginning of your message. And the pastoral care associate, who I believe is Sharon Babla, will in a few minutes read those out loud. You can also instead connect privately in the chat with the pastoral care associate and look for the participant window, PCA, before their name. And I mentioned it was Sharon. Another option is to click and raise your blue hand in the participant window, and Sapphire, our technician, will unmute you and invite you to share your joy or sorrow. But before we share the ones that are live right now, some have come in during the week, and we like to read those first, and Sapphire has two that she's going to read now.
Our first joy is from Jonathan and Seeger Newell. They are celebrating their 53rd wedding anniversary this weekend. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Another joy is from, well, joy or sorrow is from Kathy Harris. Last week, a large hemlock tree and utility pole fell onto the driveway of daughter Beth and her neighbor missed the houses, no other harm done.
Do we have any blue hands this morning?
Yes, we do. Dave and Sandy Stone.
Go ahead.
Good morning. We are just about tomorrow to celebrate the first day of college for our two eldest grandchildren, which is an entirely different adventure from what anyone else has ever done, as far as I can see, with the changes in educational access and the COVID. So cross your fingers.
We'll see how it works. One's going to be virtual, I think, and the other is going to be in person, both at Hudson Valley.
Thank you. So far, no more hands.
All right, well then let's go to Sharon and hear our virtual, or our chat, joys and sorrows. Can't hear you, Sharon.
I got it.
Good, there we go.
From John Shoemaker and Donna Dolan. So saddened by the sudden death of cousin and dear one, Mark. So sorry. Also from John and Donna, so happy for the second major surgery of friend Dave. And from Chris Bystroff, sad that daughter is going back to college after spending most of the summer here. Happy to have submitted a paper for publication, accumulation of 5 years' work. And from Carol Butt, my oldest granddaughter has gone off to the University of Buffalo, where Mark and I met. Her parents met, and her aunt went. We are both thrilled and anxious for her. And that's all of the read alouds. Thank you.
All right, great. So for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, of which there are many, let us hold all that we've heard and felt in our hearts. And we move one more stone for that. Virtually. And I have a meditation for us this morning. My heart is heavy this morning with the weight of the past week. A week that began with a police shooting of a young black man in Kenosha, followed by the deaths of 2 white protesters in that city 2 days later. A Republican National Convention that brought distress and disbelief to Democrats and pretty much anyone not captivated by the cult of Trump. Then a climate change charged hurricane hit the Louisiana coast with 150-mile-an-hour winds and buckets of rain that came up our direction and eventually washed out our Saturday morning activities yesterday. Fires burn out of control in the West. People struggle to breathe as smoke fills the air. People continue to catch COVID-19 in large measure because of the lack of presidential leadership. Schools must cut back. K through 12 schools, as many other government agencies will do due to the New York State revenue deficits and the president's refusing to fund them. While the stock market sets new highs and so many suffer economic misery. Let us turn inward to find a harbor from the storm. Let us create a safe room in our hearts, free from contamination of wind and smoke and rain. Let us calm our nerves, releasing the fears of the future and the remorse from the past, to dwell peacefully in the stillness of this moment. Spirit of life and love, of all that is named holy. Spirit of the wise ones and the compassionate ones who have come before us and will follow us. Be in us and amongst us in these hard times. Remind us that troubles do not last always. This too shall pass. Show us that we are not alone. Others walk with us. Countless people share our concerns and are already active, making change, making a difference. Hold us with loving kindness when we don't think we can go on. Be at our side when we speak out and step out to fight for justice. These are hard times. May we be shaped by them in a way that leads to the liberation of all. Let us hold these words and our own thoughts, reflections, and prayers in a time of silence as we enjoy a little water flowing down waterfall. Our reading this morning comes from the book Never Good Enough: How to Use Perfectionism to Your Advantage Without Letting It Ruin Your Life by Dr. Monica Ramirez Lasco. So, my question for you as you're listening to this reading is to figure out who you identify with emotionally, not rationally, emotionally in this anecdote. Do you identify with Brent or do you identify with Lily? Brent received an employee evaluation with a score of 92 out of 100 and an 8% raise in his salary. He went back to his office and dwelled on that 8 points short of perfection that he missed, trying to figure out why his supervisor had not given him a perfect score. He felt hurt and angry and thought about quitting. He calmed himself down by reminding himself that he was never going to be good enough and is lucky to have his job. Instead of anger, he felt depressed and rejected. Brent's friend Lily, who has a similar position in another department, received her evaluation with a score of 91 and an 8% raise in her salary and wanted to celebrate. "I am so good," she said. She called Brent to brag, but his secretary said that he wasn't taking any calls. The biggest difference between Lily's and Brent's experience was in how each perceived the scores on their evaluation. Lily does not demand perfection from herself. So for her, a score of 91 was high. It meant success and more money. She knew that she was doing a good job and that her supervisor rarely gave anyone a perfect evaluation because he thought it would make his employees stop trying. Although Brent got the raise he needed and expected, he also expected a perfect employee evaluation. He thinks to himself, no matter how hard I try, I'm never good enough. Good enough for Brent meant a score of 100 or maybe 99. The score of 92 was further validation of his faults, how he is unappreciated, and how he is really going nowhere in this job. So ends the reading. An important way we celebrate life each Sunday is by an offering to practice generosity. Members and friends support our congregation with an annual pledge paid throughout the year. Another way to support the good work of this congregation is by making a generous donation via one of the options shown on this slide. You can click on the tiny URL link that should be showing up now in the chat window to donate, or you can send a text to the number shown on the screen. The examples on the slideshow on how to label your text indicate the amount of how to put the amount in and the purpose and the intent of that gift. Note that today, the last Sunday of the month, is Food Pantry Sunday, a chance to support the Focus Food Pantry in which we participate. And you can donate that from either going to the online or to text to do that. We have a little more music for you while you're doing that. The offertory is again by Elena. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that beautiful music. So Here are some questions for you to ponder from the book by Dr. Kevin Lehman titled, When Your Best Isn't Good Enough. Number one, if your boss asks you to do a special report for her, would you be most likely to A, immediately be afraid you'd never get it finished by her deadline, B, worry about whether she'd like your finished project, C, be proud of the fact that the boss had chosen you? Question two, if you called your best friend on the phone and he asked you to please call back later because he had an appointment that he was late for, would you A, think you had offended him somehow and he simply didn't want to talk to you, B, felt that this was typical because everything else was more important to him than you are, or C, gladly agree to call him back and think nothing further about it? Or three, question three, if you overslept and were 15 minutes late for work, would you A, figure that your reputation was ruined because everyone had seen you coming in late, B, report yourself to the boss and promise to work 30 minutes of your lunch hour to make up for it, or C, realize that everyone oversleeps once in a while and promise yourself that you'll try not to do it again? If answers A or B had resonance with you, you might also have a preoccupation with failure, rejection, and criticism, and a tendency to magnify your mistakes and flaws. I hope that this sermon will help you experience the C answers more often. We live in times that can drive us toward an attitude of self-judgment. No matter how hard we try to do our best, it can feel hollow and empty if we feel we are not measuring up, not good enough. I sense this is one of the great problems of our internet-connected world. It is so easy for us today to compare ourselves with others and feel deficient. Right now, you might be looking at yourself and your little Zoom selfie, a blemish here, an unruly hair there, some lines that you hadn't seen before. In our bathroom, we have this mirror that's 6 feet by 4 feet, and it has a string of lights above it that I have to look at myself as I brush my teeth or maybe glance at my body as I go into the shower. And I imagine even the most beautiful and handsome people with a muscled, sculpted, youthful bodies or maybe perfect hair still obsessed the way I do over the signs of aging. None of us can avoid when facing our reflection. I'd like to know at what age we're supposed to have the optimal body, if that exists at all. Been waiting a long time for that. Now it's probably too late. The pandemic is forcing me to look at myself and listen to myself more than I ever have as I go from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. I just recorded a bit of video and song for Randy for a performance this fall, and I thought it looked and sounded fine. I have a decent voice and can stay mostly on pitch. Then I played it back without the recorded vocal track in my earphone. And I could hear a little waver in my voice and notes that weren't quite where they were supposed to be. So I re-recorded several audio tracks to splice into the video until I got one that sounded better, but it still wasn't perfect. Anyone who plays an instrument has experienced this struggle. As they pluck the guitar strings, they draw the bow on the violin, or they touch the piano keys, striving to play the notes written on the score. In their heads, they are competing with the performances of various virtuoso individuals that they've heard easily available on YouTube, to which their broken half-formed notes are but a weak comparison. It can be hard to accept your efforts as good enough when you've heard better. The yearning for perfection gets stimulated in me when I do yoga asanas. You can tell me 100 times that holding the pose the way the instructor does isn't the point. You can tell me 1,000 times that the goal is for me to use the pose to explore my own body, accepting it as it is and gently stretching it. I want to hold the pose perfectly, or at least as good, if not better, than the teacher. Athletes don't want to be good enough and get an honorable mention. They want to be the best and push past the competition with their own personal best, questing to go where no athlete has gone before, or at least someone their age. Social media can exacerbate this competitive drive. Seeing all those happy pictures of your friends wearing beautiful clothes, visiting exotic destinations, enjoying delightful social gatherings and family events can be depressing if you aren't able to enjoy the same level of consumption, travel, and social engagement. Dating, too, has become so much more difficult. People's expectations of relationships are so much higher than they used to be. I wonder if it's partly driven by not wanting to repeat the errors of our divorced parents. Young singles aren't looking for someone who is good enough to be a co-parent or a provider. They are looking for a perfect match, a soulmate. And then, when rings and vows have been exchanged and children enter the picture, the skyrocketing expectations continue of being the perfect mom. And it's enough to break your heart. After all, who wants to be the mother who doesn't give their child the one thing they needed to succeed in an increasingly competitive world, to be the best that they can be? The globalization of the economy is only making that competition more fierce. With many jobs today, you are competing with people in China, India, Germany, Brazil, South America, to name just a few places. Good enough isn't good enough anymore. And the result, for many of us, is increasing self-doubt. Am I good enough? Motivational writer Richard St. John adds a little gasoline to that fire that drives people towards perfectionism. He writes, "Often there's a reason we doubt ourselves. If the voice in my head is saying I'm not good enough, maybe it's right. Maybe I'm not good enough and I have to get better." Animation film director Robin Budd says, "I find most really talented people are incredibly insecure. They're always thinking that they're not really that great. There's always something gnawing at them inside. But that's also the motivating factor that pushes them forward." Nicole Kidman has won an Oscar for Best Actress, yet she says, "Every time I star in a film, I think I cannot act. I can always come up with a list of actresses who would do better and try to convince the director to cast someone else." Their success instead of being security blankets. Successful people have insecurity blankets that keep them from sitting back and resting on their laurels. I don't know about you, but there has to be a better way than wrapping myself in an insecurity blanket. I do not want to adopt the model of Bob Mankoff, New York cartoon editor guru, whose father taught him this aphorism: good, better, best. Never let it rest till the good is better and the better is best. The attitude I've been describing, you heard in Brent as he stewed about not getting 100 on his performance review. He couldn't accept anything but perfection, and it caused him great consternation. The perfection I'm talking about is a personal standard, attitude, or philosophy that demands perfection and, most importantly, rejects anything else. What goes along with perfectionism is unrealistic, demanding goals, a sense of personal worthlessness unless perfection is attained. Perfectionism is consumed by fear of failure. It has an all or nothing intense focus on the perfectly accomplished goal. And it has hard, cutting edges to it that is harsh, rigid, and static. When this focus is questioned, defensiveness and fault-finding come up quickly. This kind of perfectionism comes with emotional baggage. These expectations of human behavior are difficult to achieve, and that means failure is likely if the perfectionist overreaches their abilities or strives to achieve at a level that they haven't accomplished before. The emotional result is greater risk of depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. Perfectionism is a liability for those striving to deprogram themselves of white supremacy culture. Being fearful of doing or saying the wrong thing locks up and silences white folks in passivity rather than risking making a mistake. Opportunities are missed, with white people being paralyzed in distress, over-analyzing the right move, making it impossible to take even a small step. This is clearly a case of perfection getting in the way of progress. Or, as Voltaire put it, the perfect is the enemy of the good. Thankfully, there is another way. Remember Lily, who got a 91, a point less than Brent's 92, who was quite happy with her review. Lily was motivated and success-oriented too, but didn't measure herself against perfection. She saw herself as an excellent performer instead of a perfect one. An alternative to perfectionism is striving for excellence. Hear how Mark Wynn puts it in this way. Perfectionism is focused on doing the thing right, how it appears, and if others think it's done right. Excellence is about doing the right thing. It's focused on the reason for the task and the results for it to be a success. Perfectionism is a thief of time, draining your energy like a blood-sucking vampire. It bullies and criticizes you and demands unachievable outcomes, since whatever you do is never good enough. The pursuit of excellence, however, keeps you focused on what matters, fills you with energy, and can act as your cheerleader. There is no damage to self-esteem or your peace of heart and mind. Excellence focuses your attention on what's right and working well, keeps your attention on the positives and how things could be even better. The pursuit of excellence is both journey and destination, linked in an irregular spiral. Failure isn't to be avoided. It is useful feedback to be incorporated in the next iteration of the spiral. Goals are adaptable and dynamic, seeking mutual benefit and open to suggestion. The pursuit welcomes nuanced thinking, imbued with and unafraid of complexity. What guides the pursuit of excellence is an inner passion unencumbered by fear. The pursuit of excellence can hear the message of not good enough and not be discouraged. Listen to how John Weber, Michigan State's drumline coach, motivates his students. He says, "I'm very direct. I tell them that where we are now is not good enough. It's the standard. I'll let them know if what they're doing is not up to what Michigan State's drumline is about. I also engage their competitiveness, especially with the comp line, which is our competitive indoor drumline. If it's done right, you can prepare them better for life and how to handle the competition. If you look at it that way, it can be a very positive thing." Winston Churchill put it this way: "Sometimes doing your best is not good enough. Sometimes you must do what is required." What is important here isn't the external circumstances of intense competition or challenging requirements. What matters is how we meet those challenges. Those who follow the path of excellence certainly want to do their best as well, but they're guided by the meeting of the external and internal worlds in a way that doesn't produce self-doubt and self-judgment. The pursuit of excellence energizes the capacity to learn, grow, and try again. They take full advantage of the power of Gumbaru to keep going, striving to meet their goals and experience excellence, not as an endpoint, but a continuing, evolving journey. Perfection is a self-tormenting illusion created by the mind. That fiction can be released. Freedom can be found by letting go of a static endpoint where perfection is accomplished or not. In reality, our lives are an endless sequence of moments. Our lives can be an iteration of bests that will be good enough. Our best will not be good enough for everyone. That I can guarantee. But our best can be good enough for us to be accepting of and at peace with our efforts. So be it. We've got a nice song to follow that up, Building a New Way. Let's sing that together now.
On the road from
Randy. And let us extinguish our chalice with the words you'll see on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now some closing words. This is an anecdote from Vivian Hart, co-author of Self-Esteem for Dummies. From an early age, I have been a singer. The first time I remember singing was for the Mothers Club that my mother belonged to in my hometown. I was only 4 years old and I gave it my all. I am blessed with a beautiful singing voice and I've sung ever since then. A few years ago, I was going to give an afternoon workshop at a church, so I was invited to give a short talk and sing a song during the church service. I was in the middle of the song when my voice totally broke and I stopped singing. Instead of being mortified, I said, "Well, it happens to the best of us," and smiled. And then I continued singing until the very end of that song. The people in the church gave me thundering applause because they knew I had made a mistake, but had kept right on going and gave a beautiful, though not perfect, performance. Now that's Ganbaru. May we let go of any perfectionistic tendencies, make peace with who we are, and strive for excellence, guided from within. Go in peace, make peace, be at peace. And let us thank our ushers, Kathy Harris and Don Odell, our pastoral care associate. Thank you, Sharon Babla. Our welcomer, well, I think it was Peter, but it could also have been Barb. Musicians, Elena Karpoff, Randy Rosette, Chris Jensen. Our office support and technical support today, Sapphire Korea. And our summer service coordinator, Randy Rosette. And I'm not sure